Um, Hello, everyone, and welcome again on Aki Diaries with this new initiative that we have titled as Reflections. Reflections is basically an initiative where we talk to distinguished personalities from the field of architecture and design, and we invite them to present their work, present their research. And the idea here is to generate discussions, the idea here is to generate uh, dialogues on the basis of the presentations, the thoughts that are shared by the guests. And I'm delighted to share that today is our second interview in this initiative. And today we are going to talk to architect Real Rich from Raw Architecture Collaborative Indonesia. So I'd like to welcome all the people who have joined with us on social media platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also I would like to welcome the people who have joined with us on the Zoom platform. And before I hand it over to Mr. Real Rich, please allow me to welcome him on this platform. Real Rich, it's really great to have you on Archi Diaries.
Hello, Ayas. It's really great to see you here, even in online. Hello, everybody. Hello, Sankalpa as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm also delighted to share that today we also have architect Sankalpa with us as a panelist in order to generate interesting discussion and insights on the presentation that Real Rich is going to share. So before I hand it over to Real Rich, please allow me to say a few words about Real Rich and his practice that he shared with us. Real Rich Sharif was born and raised in Surabaya, a hidden gem in Indonesia with many beautiful examples of preserved architecture. After completing a Bachelor of Architecture from Bandung Institute of Technology, Real Rich worked for Foster and Partners, founded by Lord Norman Foster in London. In 2010, he obtained a Master of Urban Design and Development from the University of New South Wales. Previously, he worked for Urban Indonesia, DP Architect Singapore. Real Reach is now based in Jakarta as an architect, lecturer, and writer. Real Reach has been operating Real Reach Architecture Workshop since 2011. The practice has re-established a long history of craftsmanship in a tradition that has lasted for three generations. 60 years of practicing since Indonesian independence, though at that time the practice had no name. Today, raw architecture is well known for its quality and its authentic design innovation in the mastery of building construction in Indonesia and has won several international and national architecture design awards. The intent of raw architecture is to preserve a history of craftsmanship innovating in a current practice context. The practice has been part of a range of interesting and beautiful projects ranging from small-scale product design, landscape, and master planning. Raw architecture is designing architecture that is focused on quality and craftsmanship, producing designs that are simple and unpretentious. Incidental quality. Architecture projects strive for uniqueness with a humble character while using local materials. Please also allow me to our guest panelist, Architect Sankalpa. Architect Sankalpa is an architect and urban designer with over 20 years of experience at UG Faculty of Architecture program at CEPT University, Ahmedabad. He has been developing pedagogy that is bodily involved, modeling techniques that can be experienced and verified. Research and development on bamboo as a building material is his current area of interest. He co-established Thumb Impressions Collaborative that expanded into TIC Furniture, TIC Executive and TIC Design. I would like to welcome both Mr. Realrich and also Sankalpa, and I'm really both of us, both of you on this platform. Before Just give me a few minutes to share the very nice description. And I'm really delighted to read this because it's a fantastic piece of, you know, uh, what would I say? Not a philosophy, but it's a kind of uh, a statement of purpose by which his practice has been operating. And even the title is something that we have been really fascinated with. The title of today's talk, Real Rich has chosen, is Forming Bricolage. Something like this. There is a reflection generation forgets the old wisdom that can teach us about the building technologies of the past. This old forms a bricolage. It is an understanding that to design and build something out of the land, you need to find the roots of local genius people. This concept explores how architecture should be tested by the optimization of local resources, building technology, and the implementation method which together build the structure of local genius. This presentation explores the root and progression of the social structure that cultivates the building tradition, manifested in generations of traditional craftsmanship. It is not limited to the debate of how we should preserve the form of modern architecture, but it rather discusses the evolution of future architecture with the spirit of modern architecture by the introduction of a model of craftsmanship, a total adaptation of craftspeople, architect, builder, and client into one holistic ecosystem. It's a humble and honest attempt to reflect on raw architecture practice in Indonesia, forming bricolage. Real Rich, it sounds for a really, really exciting presentation, and I would like to welcome you to please share your presentation.
Okay, please wait. Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. Can I start? Yes.
yes, please.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Ayas, and thank you, Sankalpa, for analyst in this presentation. For me, this presentation is just a very opportunity given by Archidiaries. Along of me, we have a lot of people involved in the studio, not only me as a person. But looking at this cover presentations is involving like a three generations, like my father, my grandfather. I mean, a lot of me and my father, my grandfather has been helped by a lot of people and a lot of young people, a lot of mature people, many involving just before the practice of um, my practice, before I was born, actually. So along this one, you see there's a lot of combinations between the people and people forming the past and future is actually the bricolage itself. So I will start with the three conditions that's happening in the cities in Indonesia. So to give a bit of context, so in your picture now, if you see it, it's the in front of our studio. It's a part of the small village in the transition between the Jakarta and Tangerang. It's a transition between the kampung and then the gated community. So when see we have so many problems like Jakarta is a city. It's said that it's cultured, but it's a stress city. It has a traffic congestion, even though we have like a pandemic right now, and we have a massive problem in terms of infrastructures. While we are like chasing this kind of a transportations problem, the MRT Jakarta project started in 10th October in 2014 and it's already finished in 2019. So actually it's kind of generating into more positive vibes that a lot of people have awareness in the kind of a public facilities like a public transportations and in the need of public transportation. So in the matter of the infrastructure, we have a very huge problem like the flooding problems, like in the every early of years, and we already have a problems like flooding, and it's like damaging many infrastructure and many problems. So actually, when we have this kind of the three conditions that's happening in Jakarta, I kind of think that forming bricolage is actually is a architecture that makes we can create the design from the different strengths or available things that's created in the one unifying gesture, which combines three things. One is methodology. The second is the local tectonics, and the third one is the heart in the people, forming the tradition in the industry. Create like this adaptations mode between and the tradition. Beaton is always opposite, and we have this keyword adaptation. So I think this kind of make quite a good feeling of the win-win solutions between both of them. So when we see these three things, three philosophies of a Javanese philosophy, and we can see one is the Mamayu Hayuning Bawana is actually is a beautify the beauty of the world, and that's what architects aim, make a beauty. What's the obligation of the human is just to make a beautify the beauty of the world. The second is Manunggaling Kawula Gusti, which means that we need to be integrate with someone or something greater than me. So it's not about us. So we have to lower our ego and being a bridge, like a harmony bridge with the people, with the architecture, and we just have nothing as a pretension. And the third one is the Sangkan Paraning Dumadi, which means the basic human awareness of the ultimate goal of life. So the ultimate goal of life is we need to define it and aware it. What is our motive in this life? So by having this one, we can have like this true holy universe inside our mind as a reflections. One is the body and the hand, the body and the heart becoming the spirit, and that kind of spirit becoming the mindfulness. So you see in the left part, and you see the roots. We have the roots as our finding the locations, the loci, and then the genius people around us, and we will have to adapt to make a reflections and putting in our spirit and become the mindfulness in design. So by having that, the part of the architects usually it should be in the center of the universe. But having the center of the universe, meaning that we are just nothing. Having this kind of the nothingness is actually it makes us into like a very calming experience. And by having this nothingness, and we can have a silent, and this nothingness create what we call a suwung, and what we call suwung, and we call the explosion to the universe. And that's we can say that architectures that bring goodness to people. So by having that, I'm going to explore these three things, like a beautify, how to integrate we as an architect to the other people, like a client, to the social surroundings and everything around us, and to have the ultimate motive goal in this life, to have a mission. So first of all, the language of brick. One brick is costing like a 0.1 dollar, 10 cents per brick. So it's that. But when we come, various brick is happening. When we have the good grade of brick, it's like a 0.3 US dollar per brick. So when we see this, the bricks becomes, the philosophy becomes a wall that is alive. This project is like, call this project is like the gateway to the spirituality in this kind of reflection to the retreat. So the owner is really, really generous. And when we create this kind of language in Bali, it's like only putting the bricks as a wall And when we create a stacking, which is a biography audio, and we create a one simple language, another language, and starting with another new language, and we come the language of the weaving language. The weaving language, actually, you can create not only aesthetically, but as a sun shading towards the space is also involving the art of the constructing the brick. It's already quite for the opal. I was thinking that the one of the opportunity that to introduce architecture as an art, not only a high art, but as a usual art, which I call it bricolage art, is the way to create a very simple and primitive, simple arrangement that every people can understand and can do it by their own self. So by understanding that, only create by what perforated steel, which is usual, not like a cutting with the industry. And we can create like a simple massing, using a primitive structures, meaning a primitive massing. So that's kind of the language that's, I think that's the one of the keyword that I want to start is the local genius, which is a design which is based on a particular place, situation, or locations. And then itself is a sustainable architecture, I think. Many people said it's a political, many people said, oh, it's just a jargon, or it's just like a branding. So actually, for my side, it's not. When we say that the goal is a sustainable architecture, we already have this kind of awareness that the idea is all about the limitations imposed by the state of technology, and then it's already an organization of the ability of organize to achieve the needs of the future by the generation after us. So I will start to present about the 3 projects and 2 more epilogue projects that I want to elaborate here. The first project is called the Guild. So which means the guild is like the craftsman guild, which means that it's involving the situation around our studio. This story is all about the red ant and the black ant, and it has the nest like the red ants can do like an offensive when it got threatened, but the black ant is can defense towards the attack by the run very fast. So that kind of 2 continuum, I think is part of in our mind that sometimes we need to be aggressive, but sometimes we run and we need to adapt with the situations. So by having that, the symbol of the nest itself is all about the defense mechanism. So by the having understanding that, we provide some of the language within our studio, which we call it tectonics grammar. So by having a tectonics grammar, we can have the language of the daily life. By having that, I will start before the guild projects. And we started the project in the garage. You know, it's in the middle of the gated community. And the discrepancy of the high density and the low density. So this is the house made, and you see the beside the house, it's actually is a very functional house. And this is the entry of our garage, which means that we provide the studio with the many books, with the material catalogs, trying to understand. This is like 10 years ago when we didn't have so much space, and we just make use of the space. So along of this is just like a young people, not senior people. A lot of people who just help my grandfather and my father, they still had not joined the studio at that time. Just along after 2 years and 3 years for formation of our studio, and then we had the chance to be together again. So by having that, the situation is quite intense, and so we form this kind of tubular life just along the old buildings. So by having that, we have like a discussions time with forming by the modular structures by plywood. we create like what's available is the carpenter. So we hired two carpenters that help our studio as a way to service the client as well. So by having that kind of language between the people who can make the carpentry works, we already quite creative in the matter of the how to make the designs in this in the plywood manners, because we only have the resource of the carpentry works. So this is the picture of my father at the top, and the right bottom is the Thai Devon, the right left is the Norman Foster. So three of them, they have the similarity. So they act in the daily life, not only like in the like a formal manners, but in the daily life, they already showing the critical thinking. For example, like a Thai Devon is very well known by the like a building a structures which using the usual techniques. So he's creating a manuals of books of the low cost reinforcement structures for the people. So things like that, looking for the people doing research through the manuscript, and including the Lord Norman Foster as well. It's like catalog updated every year, like doing archiving for his work and evaluating with the critics. And my father always said, if you have problems, always go to the basic. So you need to always striving for the excellence by doing a good process. So from both three of them, we can say that it's kind of like the coined by my father, like sing like no one's listening, love like you've never been heard, dance like nobody's watching, and life like it's heaven on earth. So by having that, we can have this kind of chemistry between us, like a chemistry of respect, appreciation towards other. Like we have like an appreciation every month, talking to each other with it personally. We are still evolving, but I'm as well. I'm still learning to appreciate people within the studio. So this is the condition now when we have the pandemic, and that is me, and then along me is the designers, and in the middle of the managers in the studio, and a lot of things that we have the like along us is the rooster bricks and a lot of materials like happening inside the studio is architect's practice. And this is like one brilliant student from India titled Rucha. So looking at the guild and looking at the compositions of the traditional forms, and it's all about the forms, but it's all about the content to create for example, how the lights coming to the side with a local material like a concrete available, steel available, like a plastic available, plywood available. And to create this kind of composition is quite not easy. But by having togetherness in this thinking together, thinking through together, I think this compositions makes it quite beautiful in the process. We are not aiming for the products, but in the process, we can see this kind of explorations help us to make more experimentation in the tectonics grammar. So when we see this one is combinations between complexity, a lot of contradictions between one to another, and we can see this kind of exploration of coming primitive compositions like an arc, a triangular. And from that kind of point of view, we can have like a combination between a big massing, small massing, combination of massings. And it's in order to get that, we create to get a more progressive methodology from the massing to the materiality, and we can talk about it later, like a 7 steps of methodology. So when we talk about the methodology, when you see something like this, nobody will not smile. Everybody will smile, looking at the story of process, the story of happiness along the team, and story of the process of the making architecture. So that's what we try to celebrate in this kind of bricolage. So when we say this one is the south side, when we can open the the opening to the tropical climate. On the left side is the north side, and in the middle we have an atrium, and these compositions is the plywood summer pavilion, and actually was moved to this new location, and it's actually it can be used. It's already been moved 4 times, and there is a common library and free school inside the guild. So it's a part of the internship programs. So actually this is the site, and you see the access is over here. So this is north, south, west, and east, and the heat radiations comes from the west. So actually from the west, we try to just close the facade. So this is the side, and you see the placement of public kids library on the west side of the buildings, and we create a one courtyard entering this one. And there is north-south orientations, and we have a west side solid wall and private area as the home for me and my family, because I stayed there, and this is a construction of light well and like a rainwater catchments. So this is the sketch of the guild from the west side, and you see the facade is actually solid, no openings, and only openings with the perforated panels here, just for people sneak peek outside to the studio. And this is for the south. Is quite open. A lot of it with involving the steel vertical lines. And this is the plan, So actually, is very difficult to imagine if not many people visiting this studio. But the entering is from here, and actually is going around and going to the side, and you can enter to here and can go up. So actually, it's like a very flexible concept. Maintaining the grid of 6 meters, and the longest grid is 4 meters, the widest grid, and the 6 meters is for the longest one. So it's like it's actually the space is quite narrow, even though it's a 6 meter span, and you have the space inside the here is only 3.2 meters. So by having this kind of we can have that kind of flexibility of using the studio. So this is the construction process when we try to have the locality like a steel weathers to construct things on site in the factory. So by having that kind of attitude, we can have like a bricolage using the interpretation of the vernacular constructions. Like this thing, the craftsman never done it before. This kind of like light wells going through the buildings. So by having this kind of thing that people can appreciate the architectures through the lights and through the construction techniques and through not only the forms outside but inside. So it's more essentials, not only like the literal things. So this is the activity that's happening inside the studio when we have the community, we have the architecture community or the amphitheater in the forms of Pecha Kucha. And the library and communities becomes public kids library. So we have like an indoor lecture and then space for the gallery, and we have the retention water that's placed here for the entire site, like ranging for radius of 50 meters, not only for this building but along for the surrounding building, because this area is already quite flooded, and we put a retention tank just below the surfaces. So this is the types of the tectonic tremors that we already developed at the beginning. So this is the first language, the second language, the third language, the fourth language. So everything is just quite intense with the minimum cost, maximum aesthetics, how to create very local materials to gathering lights, and then very easy tectonics to put inside. So this is another language. So this is the final forms of the Tumpang Sari, forming the very soft lights coming from the side, and then this one is to gather the structures, and then this this oculus forms creates this kind of quite aesthetics for the site. So there's the projects inspired the relation with the owners. That's forming the interpretation with the Joglo Javanese in the spiritual forms, like this one, we have a traditional Javanese that I'm trying to just elevate the site to have like a more cross-set ventilations. So actually not so high, and it creates like a coolness and between the transition space through the focal point to the middle. And this one is the ordinary, like a Javanese house, like you have like the entry point as a pendopo, and you have the more like a focal point and the service at the back. That like the transformation between the transition between the terracing, transition space, focal point, and the service at the back. So by having that, we create this kind of compositions. Like during this simple massing, like a 3.22 in the modules of 3 meters by 3 meters, we can get this kind of combinations of the light wells massing by entrance to the side, and you get the focal points, and you have the backside points, and it's simple as that. And at the all of the rooms, including the bathroom, has natural lights as a way to create some of the openings. So when we have this kind of concept, the technology grammars easily really helps on us to have advocacy with the clients, and including the manuscript. We have the advocacy to the broader audience as well, to form writing of books in the form of books, in the form of the case studies, and we spread it, and we really share it to the people, like without any many secrecy, with the frameworks, with the creating the methodology of the design and evaluations within it. Because the critics that the things like that, actually it brings up more noise. So by having that, we have create like a sound reducer for the client to can easily resting in the rooms. So by having like an open up discussion like that, actually there is an evaluation process. So the second project is the Kujang Bandung. I many Kujang because of it's actually my friend. I call it Kuyandeling because I love bamboo. Kujang meaning like the weapon in the Sundanese. It's like one of the tribes in Indonesia. Like Kujang is the weapon. It's actually forming the tubular shape. In the center is the rectangular shape because it's very easy to form a rectangular shape. But outside is the tubular shape because the wind is pretty harsh in this area. So the wind from the north is like a blocking and transversing within this building, the rectangular covered with the tubular. And in the middle, we have the stress like holding the structure as well. Because the stress is already there for like many years. So we want to put the stress as a holding of the structure as well. And we have this kind of interactions with the bamboo craftsman, which is very beautiful to work with. Is very easy and very excited to work or have this kind of craftsman techniques, like a carving, which is I think that it's like a high level of art. When we create this kind of mixtures and this kind of combinations, and it's become fulfillment in our relations and collaboration with the people. So when Ayas said that it's a collaborative practice, and it's true, it's a collaborative practice. So when this is the side plans, when you see this, everything is just floating, but not including this part. It's like a future the dentist space, and then we have the studio, and this kind of a bookstore for here. And actually, the ground floor is designated for like a small field farming, and this one is actually it's like an exhibition hall at the top. It's like a openable. And this one is 3 levels. Actually, the first level and the second level is for the bedrooms. So actually, the form is like that. The tubular, and you have the like a surface corridor in the middle. So it's like a protected. So the structures, bamboo structures, in the middle protected from the with the like a tubular structures here, and it's covered with the plastic. So actually, it's like a I call it a dead material. and inside is the organic materials. So in here, the treatment is quite different. It has a very long cantilevered roof. So it's actually the form is like that. So it's forming like a kujang. So basically, it's like a very in the grid. It's a very primitive grid using rectangular structures covered with the rectangular, covered with the curvilinear. This is the first initial working drawing. Is like so. It's we collaborate directly with the craftsman. So this is the language, like using a 3 meter by 3 meter times 3 meter, and we create a circle like that. So by having that by relation, as we can get this kind of forms. So having connections to the plastics going to the cantilevered long roof, which supported by this kind of 3 bamboos here to support to shorten the cantilever. And this one using concrete poured with the glue and poured with the wooden powder, and we can reduce the structure of the bamboo. So this one is using the steel and the steel inside and covered with the to put like an underground praying room or the space. So this is the situations like a carving craftsman, carvers, they are carving the bamboo, placing the composition of the bamboo, like putting it together, and it's become like a language of the space. So you see when we see this kind of the door, and it's the bending door, and actually it's not easy to bend it, but it's you need to slice it a bit and you need to glue it together with the construct. So and in all of this like engineer it, and we made it by ourselves on site. So it's not like an industrial and we put it together. No, the only industry that we put it here is this one panel, like a GRC panel, because it's flat. It helps to cover the the soft and then lot of mechanical things inside. So this one is like the wing rotations openings just to help us to create like a solid and becomes a void to create the privacy. So this kind of compositions really helps us to understand that there are some of the boundary before that in our practice between the craftsman and our universe. But by having this kind of execution in this project, we kind of unlock the boundary and kind of understand it's within the project even better by having this kind of like a total craftsman architecture. So by having that, I remember this theory by Gordon Dominic about the starting from the primitive structure. You start from the primitive TP-shaped structures, and then in the progression of the history, people try to like a more permanent structure, and then it's happening like that. So this is the progression between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 6 is the more permanent structure. So I mean, this kind of thing like reposition my thinking that possibly that the roof could be quite light in order to achieve some of the estimal methodology in terms of the construction process. So by having that, we have before that left and right, and we have this kind of like a forming very simple and curvy linear, which is quite light, using a nipa and then carpet, waterproofing carpet, and carve place on top of it. We put a polymer to be a second protections for the nipa roof, and then by having that, I think we can get this kind of we can call it probably it's towards this more sustainable organic architecture by having like a carbon neutral architecture. That this area we can get like a probably the future of architecture in Indonesia and lies in connecting new technology with the traditional craftsmanship, which probably the 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 difficulty is all about to how to advocate the client to follow this kind of principles. But by having this kind of tectonics grammar, I think it's quite open-ended, and it's quite starting in some points to understand the tectonics even better. But by understanding tectonics, we can create understanding of architecture, and that's the beginning. Because a lot of people, like ordinary people, they can understand only the tectonics. They don't understand the methodology. So this kind of prepare this kind of more elaborated project in Alpha Omega School when we have the adaptation concept between the more industrial and organic concepts built by the combination of the steel welder, masonry, and then that we create like a floating structures. So actually, it's like a floating area every year and here. And this is the second structures. We call it workshops, which is entirely made by bamboo. So if you see the timeline, Alpha Omega schools built after the guild. So after that, have the Kujang or Piandaling, which in Bandung. And then this one is the second antecedent for us. That's, I think this one could be the next adaptation process of our studio. So by having that, we can have this kind of master plan inside the Alpha Omega. So we see then we have this massing here on the side periphery used to block the noise, because this one is not. This one is in the housing area. So by having that, we try to connect the connection with the bamboo bridge as a construction worker access has become like a permanent access now, because the client like it and then want to preserve it, even though it's already for the temporary purpose. And by having in the middle, we can have like a circulation. It's like a finger, and when you're standing here in the teacher's room, you can see another area of the school, and it's become like a defensible space, so people can look after each other. So at the back is workshop rooms, and the combinations between the materials like a steel, bamboo, a nipa, and then like a bricks is all actually made the building. So this is the challenges, like the flooding every year, and the how we make the building just by material, which just range from the 5 kilometers from the site, and combinations between the modular structures facing the high level land, and it's all about the combinations between the brick, steel in the floating structures, combinations with the 1.4 meter height. This one, so people, when the students sit and they can see outside, but when you walking here, you can see inside. And actually, this one we have a hole, so actually the noise. Sometimes when you be very loud, the class outside can see you. So in here, this kind of, we can get the tolerance within the school environment, so people can hear what in the quite good manner, can hear the other people when it's become too loud. So when we see this one become an activity of space, become permaculture, the space become alive, and there is like the combination between the bricks and the more ergonomic space created by the curved bricks. And you know, the concrete here is not finished. It's only like pouring the concrete and keeping it flat, and that's it. So there is no like it's very raw, and this brick as well is very raw. There is no like so much finish. And this one we discussed with the structure engineer to create this kind of lighter structures that can hold itself. So the solutions is coming into this kind of curvy, linear, hyperbolic roof that can hold itself, and it's become like the place for the people that want to like a form work to create. If you want to change the organic material, and you can do it easily. So it's become like a butterfly, analoging butterfly structures, like fairy lights. And this again, we come up to the tectonics grammar and the client, we had the meeting like only for as far as I remember, only 3 meetings to 2 meetings in these projects. So the client, we create like a tectonic grammar, and client approved it, and we just build it. So it's become like the language of this uh, uh, school, and we made the mock-up after mock-up to make the client agree with the grammars that we provide. By having that, I think we carry the combination of material structure and finishes bamboo under one level building to the two levels buildings, and but two levels building in this part we use steel structures. By having that, we create another buildings at the back called the workshop buildings, because the client very happy with the bamboo building performance, and they wanted us to create building at the back for the workshops area. Then we create like a one in the middle of the atrium building, which create the air stacking effect. So the hot air comes up to go out to the buildings. And this is the construction drawing that we made, not drawing but model. So we create this kind of model as a structures model for the buildings. So this is the pictures that's showing that actually the building itself is the floating, but after the discussion with the owner decided to put more heavy equipment on the workshops, and this one needs to be braced by the stone construction. You see, when we have this kind of relation and chemistry, it's not common. So it's like a more adaptation. So architecture for my is kind of alive, like an adaptive responsive between one to another. So it's quite of changing. So it's become like a changing like that, you know. So it's transforming when you see this one. The leveler, we as a leveler. So trying what's happening available on site, and we try to just maintaining all of this bamboo. We use it until to the limit, you know, until we weaving the facades, and with all of collected to site, and we try to like draw put natural preservation for the bamboo, and with all of this kind of tectonic grammars in the terms of joints, and we're still collaborating with the bamboo craftsmen. So actually we're quite working backwards with them. So we understand the traditional technique using the bracing and using the rod, and we try to implement these new techniques using the glue later on. So this kind of forming a language which is not simple, not only brick as a brick, steel as a steel, bamboo as a bamboo, but it's like a whole new adaptation between one to another. So this is in a grid, matter of grid is very simple. In a grid 6 meter and the 2 meter, you got the multiplications of the forms. But how to place it, the primitive form becomes very important. How to place this form? So in the middle, you can have like the cafe, for example, is very difficult to have to testing one bit or another with the with the argumentations, how big the class, and we need to have like a separate approval with the clients. So this one showing that the floating structures along with the crosser ventilations going to the side in the matter of the floating structures, 0 and minus 2.1 meter, the structure is floated on 2 meter above the ground. So this one is the principle of the inside and outside. We have the combination of 5 workshops from the inside we can access to the atrium. So things like that is like happening. So I come up into my last thoughts about the projects. This is our project is called the bamboo scapes. This one the skin's been changed like several times. Now it's up with the gray. And just last month it's covered with the color of the bamboo again. We maintain to get like a finishing which color like bamboo. It's not, but actually inside is a bamboo. Why is that? It's just for the protection of bamboo itself. There is a part of the camouflage. So basically this project comes from the recycled projects in Alpha Omega projects. So it's a form of the scaffolding project. Actually, it's a studio, it's an off, and it's a auditorium at the top. So actually, it's forming like a 2-story below the surfaces, because this one is the heartland. When we try to dig the space and we come to see that, okay, this space can be used actually. And by looking at that, okay, so then we can have like this permanent structure underneath, and then the more adaptation structure like organic structures like on top of it. So by having that, we can create like a totally adaptation concept between one to another. And a lot of grammars being exercised, like doors, like a singular doors that can be accessed by 2 people, that can be accessed to sides. So, and a lot of this, like a big column that forming trees that actually holding the roof, and then this floor plate using bamboo structures. So this kind of the screed techniques that we use as on the top of the like many layered bamboos. So it's actually like transforming. Before we use this floor plate, and we use this floor plate, we try to test the very thin concrete combination with the wood powder. So actually it's like that. So by having that, we are quite having collaborations with the chemists by having this polymer, having this waterproofing for the roof. So actually we quite in the progress of having this kind of the what that can be created on top of a layer of weaving brick bamboos. So by having that, we kind of get this kind of forms by combinations of the columns, big columns like bamboos, and you can create on top of the concrete underneath, and we can get adaptation between organic and more industrial. And by having that, this kind of forming a new guild, and this Guha bamboo is become like a Guha complex, which and then this one is the craftsman's. The Pa'ano is actually it's like call it. We have like several tribes in our office now that's helping to build and manage and all of this, and collaborate with us, like having this kind of very simple gardening, and with the very self-sustained, that we can put the plantings in the vertical forms, and as these plantings helps to we spread all of these seeds to the other people adjacent our buildings. So by having that, actually this building is covering with the west. So before we see we cover west is to put the concrete bricks with the cement. So now we have it different. By covering the west side, it's not only by the industrial material, but you can have like a living material. And we kind of have this new grammar alongside this our studio. So this kind of new grammar again, like this sliding door made entirely by bamboo and covered, and the transparent is by plastic. So things like that, by all of the combination of the three structures, and then this kind of the opening of the entrances is become like a language of the curve language, and this kind of the very curvy linear railing. It's become like this one, which I said to you before, the 2 people can go in and go out in the same times. So it's kind of this playful ambience that we want to put it inside of creativity. So this one is the situation inside the studio, and it's become the language of the bamboo and become language of the grammar, this thing. And you see the combination between inside and outside. And at the end, we can see again these 3 things, like beautify the world, oneness with the creator, basic human awareness, ultimate goal of life, which I think this one is a transformation. You see from the beginning in the garage until now, we have to say that, okay, we need to say that we are being very lucky to be survive. We call that term is selamat. Selamat meaning just survive, meaning being grateful of the what little things that we have now, which I think this can constitute these three things as a whole act of reflections in these topics. So being having a selamat meaning, I think, okay, just enough. Today is good, so let's create something good again, and have a understanding that actually we can spread happiness and goodness. So by having that, that is the ingredients, the raw material, the traditional crafts, the building technology. For I think the forming bricolage can be understood as to be critically and creatively harmony with available things by having mission as a learning, teaching, being missionaries in this world by bringing guna. Guna is the functions, being a benefit to others. Missions and chitra, meaning the image, the good image that's product by the good process to the modern era, which at the end refers to something transcendent, meaning an authenticity driving image. All of these include aesthetics, but also ecological reasoning, which is not coincidence or chaotic, but something that is in the cosmos, again in the harmony, towards total architecture, carving wisdom in this our own limited time in this world. So this one is constitutes the forming bricolage. So allow me to continue this presentation for another 5 minutes. So I want to extend this one into the more. This one is tectonics grammars, like combinations between the concrete, stone, wood, brick, plastic, gypsum, glass, metal, and bamboo. So this is one of the tools to have ourselves having in this kind of philosophy of selamat just enough, by having a vocabulary of the material, the tectonics of the materials. By having this one, we have this kind of cosmology between the methodology grammar, tectonics grammars, and craft grammars. We start with the tectonics grammar, and we drive it in the methodology grammar. And now we have to be grateful with the people, which I call it craft grammar. With methodology grammar, it's about the inversion between the mass and material to mass. Mass meaning a design mass. So this one is tectonics grammar. It's about the concretation of being a bridge as an architect from the real life to the outside of the material world. But the craft grammar is very important. It's all about the artisan, craftsman skill from the top down and the bottom up. So it's in a harmony. By having that, cosmology is we have the mountain and we have the beach, paranthritis, and we have this one is in harmony between a death and then born. So by having that, we see that Indonesia has, and along the world have a spiritual building with permanence, and it also have the impermanence building, and this kind of transformation between the plaster, concrete, steel, glass, which comes up into the more like a long area, more impermanence material using organic materials is already in the living culture now. But by having that, we can create a whole new tectonics grammar between both, because organic material has an advantage and a lot of permanence material have an advantage as well. So by having this kind of combinations, we already know the alchemy between the materials. So by doing that, I comes up into this second rules, which is a methodology grammars. This is done by Mangun Wijaya, which has the 4 elements of the methodology design, which calls the physical things, nature things, lights, and it's about the energy. And when we create this kind of vocabulary, which means you design based on the context first, and it continued with the massing, continued with the envelope, continued with the internal configuration, meaning the plan, and continued with the mechanical electrical system, with the efficiency of energy and water, and continued with the material. So all of these things started in the conceptual stage. So that is the methodology grammar, not do it this one into the design development stage. No, started in the conceptual design stage by having a grammar, which is a vocabulary of details of these kind of things. So this kind of things helps us to now how to involving this kind of holistic implementation into the collaboration between the client and architects. So this one is the whole of the regressions and progressions. So this one is the types of metogram we have published, and the last one is the tectograms. So by having that, we can have this kind of tectonics and grammar. So this one is methodology grammars. So you have the tech combined into one, it's become like a architecture grammar. So this one is the Gale, and this combination of our Omega is become our studio grammars. So when I come back in the design, which is based from a particular specific, it's true that the local genius is expressive design to this certain of directions. But at the end, we need to like archiving our grammar into one, create one beautiful grammar of methodology grammar, tectonics grammar, and craft grammar into one holistic thing. And that create towards architecture. We can create a carbon neutral, waste-free, and carbon-free city. And between that, we have tectonics, design methodology, and craft grammars. We can create guna, citra, and missions. And then in Indonesia, we have this coin, which is coin, what this is gotong royong, like a togetherness. I think this architecture, our architecture togetherness, like India and Indonesia, we are brother and sister. Like I saw the beautiful work by Sankalpa, and a lot of discourse diaries, which is I think I can really learn from the presentations, and a lot of discourse between the actors. And a lot of us need to have this creative and critical discourse inside our professions. So by having that, this is a form of gotong royong, which I think is very beautiful. From the big to the, from the big tiny, from the small things become big things. It's a form of bricolage. It's, however, this form of bricolage needs the involvement of various parties and needs a transparency. So that's what, for me itself, I'm in progress to be more transparent, to involving many parties inside the design process and inside the construction process, inside the many processes, inside the architecture. But I think this kind of thing is kind of very promising in the future. So I think this one is going to the something that is in the cosmos again, in harmony towards the total architecture, carving a wisdom in this our own limited time in this world. So I hope in our limited time in this world, we can always share this kind of moment of the beautiful process. Not only my process, for example, as an architect. No, it's not my process, but the process of togetherness and forming this kind of very beautiful process of architecture. So I think that's concluding my presentations. Thank you for listening for everybody.
Thank you, Riraj. Can you please stop sharing the presentation?
Yes.
That was before I actually give it over to Sankalpa for him to raise the questions, or even for the people who have joined with us. Let me just say that this was an amazing insight into your practice, and the way in which you have actually broken down your presentation, and even the approach to your architecture in the form of three things that you just mentioned in the last diagram that you showed. So on one hand, you have the tectonics grammar. On one hand, you have the craftsmen, the knowledge that the craftsmen bring in to this practice. And on the other hand, as an architect, there are certain methodologies that you bring in. And in that, being aware about certain decisions that you are making. So it was a really nice mix of these three things that we could actually see getting reflected in all the, I think, about projects that you have shared with us. And another thing which I was really fascinated with is the combination of the new and the old. So on one hand, you're using the local materials, you are using the local craftsmanship, but there is another layer as a designer, as an architect, someone who is aware, who is bringing onto this, and then there is something new that is being created, which is appropriate for that particular location, and thus genius loci. And I think for me that was it was really wonderful discovery by going through your presentation. So I would like to hand it over to Sankalpa, and I'm really excited to um, hear from him what his questions and views are.
Thank you, Az. Thank you, Real Rich. It was wonderful to sort of have a presentation which was very thorough, well structured, thought at various levels of right from the top to the bottom, and then it was presented and connected well. So it was not only that you started where you spoke about the mindfulness, the spirit, the human, but also tried later on to connect, and especially when you were talking about sing like no one's listening, dance like nobody is watching, and then slowly you started connecting back to this idea where there were this bricolage, which means that a diversity of materials were coming, and they were trying to express in your structure. Now in that light, uh, my first question to you would be a question which many young people will be anxious, and this question would be, therefore, when you are talking about wisdom, when you are talking about social structure, and when you're talking about new technology and traditional craftsmanship, etc., what is new? Because we are living in this world where we are so anxious today to sort of discover that, am I creative, original, new? So what is your perspective on that?
Okay, Sankalpa, you're right. Like nothing new in this kind of world, But in our practice, I mean, there is like we found out that the reflection is the this really difficult to put tectonics into the grammar. It's really difficult. By having one tectonics approved by client to have doing a several iterations. If we have finished one tectonics and we put it in the archive and we put it into the grammar, so that's done. So what's new is if we have known these tectonics, we don't know another tectonics. So again, there is another chance to learn new tectonics, which is, I think that's the definition of new. So that is the moment, is very reflection. So I think reflective is like this kind of theme of this interview is very, very deep. Because by having that is very personal, I mean, by us is in the studio, for me and my other fellow colleagues in the studio, very works. But by putting it into the grammar, it's not personal anymore. It's archived and it's published, and everybody can enjoy, and everybody can copy if they want, and improved it. So let's improve it together. So by having this one, we can always having a dialogue between and the oldness. So by having that, I think it's quite promising. Not only so we can learn from other people as well, from the old way, from the new way, from your work, Sankalpa, from the other people work. So I think it's a broader new horizon for us. So this kind of methodology, I think it can be worth to rethink as a reflection process. So that kind of definition of new is very small, though, not a big thing.
Well, I thought that your presentation and your work, in spite of the fact that you have modestly responded to this question, I found that it was quite profound and at the same time quite legible. So let me give you concrete examples for it. The first thing is that why is there an echo? Just a second. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I can hear Sankalpa.
I think one, Ayaz, can you, yeah, I think you'll have to switch off your mic. Yeah, maybe this is better. So, just a second. Yeah, now it's all right. I think there are two very important points you raised, which I felt that is hinting towards more younger generations of practitioners as well as young students to look at it. The first is the very idea when you said that dance like nobody is watching. There is a Sanskrit term for it. It is called asanga.
Mm,
Asanga means unattached. So unattached means that the fact that you're doing your work, and you're doing with full awareness about it, but not for being noticed. You're doing because it demands it to be done, uh, and it is not worked out because you're getting some awards or you're getting some other things. So you're doing for the sake of it, not for the sake of anything else, but for the sake of it. Now, so in that light, if I start looking at it, the in Asia particularly, there has been a coming together of technology from different parts of the world. At the same time, there has been plenty availability of craftsmanship. Now, always this idea of craftsmanship and this idea of technology is looked as if they are sort of trying to oppose each other. You're trying to show here by being asang, by dancing like nobody is watching. You're trying to show here is that there is a possibility of converging it without really trying to discuss about what is called pure. So instead of trying to narrowly define what is called pure in terms of modern architecture or some other architecture and trying to get into its theorizations, you're trying to flow with the idea of what you have, but at the same time trying to understand the structure of craftsmanship that is available and how can they harmoniously come together. I think that I think is one of the very important contributions already. I can see that you're making when I say that what is new, because this anxious of trying to see new is put in the symbol of saying that, oh, this is traditional. This guy is using some kind of plastic traditionally or some kind of a bamboo traditionally, etc. But here there is a shift, and
mm,
that you can shift in this convergence of both. And therefore the idea, therefore coming to the second part, which is the idea of the language and the grammar, becomes absolutely impersonal again. And I think that there you have made it even in the end very explicit to say that you do not own the grammar, having sort of, and therefore having again danced like nobody is watching, is same that you don't own it. You have said that, look, this is how concrete and steel can come together, this is how bamboo and steel can come together, or this is how concrete and timber can come together. What you're trying to say is that these are the new palettes which are available, where the industrial modes of production and the traditional modes, which is the mode of the hand, comes together. And I think that certainly is another new area where you are very clearly articulating it. Even though you are not saying it, it comes out very evidently. So I think that, if you was what I was thinking, was new to add to what you said. So therefore, I felt that you were quite modest in saying a small component of new, but actually it's a remarkable example that you are setting up.
Thank you. That's really deep, Sankapa. I'm really. I sometimes I get really difficulty to forming the thing, but I can say that I really thankful for that kind of interpretation that helped me to form the thinking as well. So learning the Sanskrit like that is very amazing for me to see, because I think this kind of a philosophical and very important to see what other people said, and then for our work, we there is a one of the key word given by my friend, which is we need. I don't know whether it's correct or not, but it's kind of the architect is in the needs to be in the space in between. So in this kind of is in the space in between makes us like a okay, this kind of forms like a this not about the nothingness, but about an act that you're just like a this like a modulations of the something that's greater. So I think thank you for that, Sankalpa.
You know, I would wish for the listeners and also for record to sort of little bit talk about you were talking about traditional craftsmanship, but you said something about social structure. And that, I think, if you can little bit highlight, then it would be very useful, because here one can see how you're trying to connect, because the kind of work which we are seeing is, sometimes it is very handmade craft, because bamboo, the moment you get into bamboo, it is non-uniform, and therefore you'll have to adapt to it. But also there is standard materials with which they are coming together. But that's craftsmanship. But you're saying that you are connecting it to social structure, and that's what would be useful for the listener to understand, because there is a similarity in sort of our context, and so it is important for all of us to know a little bit about it. How do you approach that whole question?
Yes, I was thinking that probably the way that we operate. So I will. We have like a several structures for the craftsman. Generally, we have 3 structures. One is the beginner, like more medium and advanced. Advanced is the master craftsman. In our studio, we have around 7 to 8 or 9 craftsmen. Plastered, concrete, brick, bamboo. It's like the grammar. So their training is quite interesting, because the training is on site and on practice. So by having that, it's not like a formal, like you going to the course like that. So that's why my duty, I don't say my, but our duty as an architect is to just to have the opportunity to get this kind of explorations going on. By having this kind of a broader scale, like advocating with the client, to allow the more grammars happening and more explorations happening, and it's more optimal solutions and more aesthetics. So by having that, to allow this kind of certain economic sharing, economic budgeting is very important for them. And by having that, they can have structures, and their economic sharing is very important. I have this kind of a monthly economic sharing for them, like divided from the amount of the projects, and having like a scholarship for their kids and things like that. So this kind of things is like forming this kind of informal ladder for craftsmen to have a belief that that's the future. If not, we have in the threat of danger of it's gonna be finished soon. But if we have the good methodology, when it's finished, it can be bloom again, because we have archived the methodology. It's like archiving the manuscript. By having that, I that's what I mean about the social structures. And there are 3 social structures happening. And we have this kind of capability to advocate the client. And by architect is going to be a bridge. Even though I take care of the housing, which they can be staying in the site, for example, like that. So by having this kind of things, so I think making the bridge between the craftsman and the client, which is very important. and making the bridge between the craftsman and the public who appreciate architecture, which is very important. So advocations like having going to the bottom up or top down, but this understanding that this economic sharing, how, and then the pride as well, and the craftsmen have a very, very high pride, Sankalpa. We need to have a good appreciation, like eating together, like talking politely, like to understand, like sitting in the very egalitarian, like same levels, like like not top down, but it's like a togetherness solving things. And by doing that, like creativity happening on the grassroots. Is when we got evaluated by the craftsman, like okay, sir, that still you draw it, it's wrong. It's supposed to be like a lighter, because within the lighter we can hold it very light and we can dip it with the anti-corrosion membrane. So by having this kind of dialogue, and the client see it, Sankalpa, directly in front of their eye, the interactions between us and them, and they're involving as well. When Horse Retail have the keyword like okay, to solve the problem, you have a methodology, design methodology. To solve, you need to have the frame, and you need to question everything, like 5 steps of questions. But the new this work of ethos is only about the questions. Okay, it's the question. Not only that, but it's involvement between the actors inside the process, which actually open up new horizon. And at the end, all of the regards and all of the backs again to the client and to the craftsman. And both of them, they're feeling being privileged working together. So we're like becoming like a huge family, especially with the client and the craftsman as well. So it's a continuous cycle. And by having that, I think that's the part of the social structure that can be elaborated. So, but actually, we are quite been still evolving though. I mean, many happening, especially in this COVID. One of our craftsmen get very sick, and we need to support them financially and things like that. We already now it's quite, but luckily we don't have any fatality in this pandemic, which is, I can say myself, it's a selamat. It's just enough able to survive. We feel very grateful. Yeah.
When you were showing the bamboo structure, the doors or some of the other forms, now that requires tremendous amount of craftsmanship. I mean, only if you have worked with bamboo, you can know that, to get a curved door, then to get all your alignments right, to select the correct bamboo, to match the diameters, there are no gaps, then to connect to as a landing joint, you can go, and then to connect to the end piece. Now, all of these requires absolutely each bamboo unique, and then you are connecting it. And I think that what you're saying in terms of trying to build a relationship, not of top down, but really to respect the craft, and also to sort of make architecture more than what it would obviously be. That kind of a synergy one can really see in the work, and therefore certainly one can think about that what is the nature of the collaboration, because high quality of work requires a very different nature of collaboration, especially when it is crafted, which is different from when you are using standard products. And some of the students or some of the viewers who would have worked with material would appreciate this kind of meticulous work that has gone into some of these things. The other thing I was thinking about is that, look, this is a chap who is working with steel, and then again putting a roof out of bamboo, or this is a person who is sort of making a circular form, making a rectangular structure system, and outside wrapping up with a circular form, and then wrapping plastic sort of about it. How does this bricolage concept happen? How does this happen? What is the process?
So one of the thing is like a one affect another, one project affect another project. So it's like that. So it's like a continuous responsive. Like in between, like we have like a small amount of time to construct the project, and suddenly we have like get help from the craftsman, from bamboo craftsman, and I find trust with my team and manage to convince the client to use as a roof because it's way more optimal, and the foam itself is lighter. So they can have like a two levels of the structures. Before it's only like one level. So after it's calculated and calculated, and it's becoming like a time. Time is answer a lot of this kind of a casualty inside the projects, one to another. But by opening one to another resource, and we can have like this kind of a bricolage between a recycled material and the plastic wrap is a recycled material. It's driven by the one of the relation from our supplier because it's the waste product. They don't use it anymore. So I asked that material for them, and they gave it to us, and then we made this kind of bricolage. So this kind of thing is like open up and be. I don't know how to say, but it's like to have the be like roots with everybody. So it's kind of this casualty within the time, within the budget itself, knowing the client has a budget and how to win solutions, and knowing that craftsmen have budget and they have the aesthetic, and like bridging the aesthetic to the client, like changing the client's mind. Clients become like the advocate for us. So it's becoming like many people want to use bamboo, and many people want to use that kind of weaving bricks. So it's kind of like a very open and very transparent process actually, and it's far away from this kind of pride, in architecture. It's far away. It's more ethical, but it's like a very humble and very open process. It's transparent process. It's for a humbling experience. It's not hurt at all. It's very encouraging, and we have a lot of support from the clients and support from another colleagues, from the critics, and it's the way that a lot of critics actually is really, really hard. When it's said that some of the maintenance of the bamboo needs to be rethought, and we kind of transform within that period to put the cantilever forms for the protection for the bamboo. So I think that kind of thing is just to open the eye. That's actually we can learn every time when we start the projects. But when we're having a grammar, we don't need to start from the zero again. That's what more interesting again. And it's getting more easier and easier by the time, and easier from the people around us, and easier for the people who read the manuscript, and easier. So I think the architecture should be easier for people. So I think, so make it very simple like that. So by having that, architecture can be the blessing for the human. See, not to make like something very acrobatic, but it's very form, but it's very difficult to execute. But it needs to be very rethought, and I think that's like a whole process. But I think our work, it just reflects the situation and context in our situation, though, in our certain types of the specific projects. I think if in India or in the New York, it's going to be quite different. So I think that's the part of the in every area needs to find their own bricolage. I think it's a French word, I think this now is the transnational, transregional. We need to very open up our eyes. So let's share the beautifulness of the each other approach and learning. So I think by having that, so I think that's what I can say, Sankalpa.
A little bit. Do we have time? Yes.
Yes, Sankalp.
Okay, thanks. Now let's get a little bit more into the aspects of architecture, and I'm sure many students would be keen to sort of listen this. So if we look at the way you are treating the modular bricks, the bricks which is module, and you're using this word weaving, you're weaving the brick. It is sort of it is not a warp and weft. It is not the domain of the brick. The domain of bamboo would be the warp and the weft. Okay, yeah. And when you're trying to deal with mass, which is concrete, then we see the steps and the way in which the light falls, and you have got this striated, the light and the shadow, and sort of. I see that that you're looking at some material in a slightly different manner. From the perspective of your own poetics, your own imagination, versus if I look at it from the point of view of construction, would you highlight a little bit about? I would not say separation, but I would say that that this analogous relationship of looking at weaving and looking at modular things.
Sankapa, the most interesting thing is the secret between the weaving brick. The secret is the steel. Not the steel that planted inside, but the steel to be the framework of the brick. So, in the middle of the brick, we have like a steel which is very precise. To have very precise brick, and we have it in our tools. So the generations of the form itself, it's not about the forms, but about the tools to make that form. So, you remember door. Actually, we have the machine to just we make it to bend the steel manually, Okay. And suddenly we put a dynamo in the middle, and it's become like a motor. So we don't send it to the factory. So by having that, I think that's one of the most fundamental secret. By having tools on your specific problems that you get and your specific aesthetic that you want to get. But in the process, it's very interesting. When we discussed it with the craftsman, we have very intense discussions. 1, 2, 3, and until at the end, we got this aha moment. We got it like that. When we got it, we got very excited, And everything, some people will make a video of it, and some people will take a picture in front of it. So it's that kind of thing. It's some kind of this creative leap, But the creative leap used to happen on your drawing table. But this one is different. We put it in the workshop. I think the guild is very important to find like a common ground for the experimentations, to have like a hand-to-hand and eye-to-eye between the people inside. And everything is just documented. And everyone, they are documented. Their effort is credited. So I think in this kind of things, I can say that the formations of the tools, actually, that's after the bricolage. After the bricolage, we have the formation of the devices to make the forms. But before you need to find the first, what's the important in the design process, like a plus, and then, okay, you got it. So what's your tools now? So the tools will make the things very optimal. So that kind of thing, I don't think I'm ready to make like this kind of tools grammar. I'm not ready. It's like a scattered everywhere. It's like a make everybody in a headache now. But we have it like a many devices, It's like undocumented as well. It's a beautiful and it's like embedded inside the forming of the weaving. So every tool is just different. The tool is like at the first time, it's only like a manual tools. It's like this size. So after that, it's become like a huge, like a one wall. The weaving is just for like one wall. It's not like this. Tools is like what the straightener or like a very sharp is you can just like that. It's not that. It's just the beginning, like 7 years ago. But now it's like a huge, become like a machine, huge, with a lot of things like that. And especially the bamboo itself, they have like a mold, like a round, big round like that. So, and the mock-up of the doors like that, the hinge, the vocabulary of the hinge like that. So I don't know. Actually, I cannot even chase what the craftsmen think. So that's more important. So I think we need to have the time to just digest it and then make optimal and evaluate it again together.
I think I'll have one more question as before you can open up. So uh, one of the other anxieties of our time is that we are seeing a lot of hand drawing in your presentation. And how do you look at this hand and emerging technologies? And where are you seeing this coming together? Because it is important to ask you, because you don't shy away from trying to experiment, trying to put things together, which means that certainly when you are trying to think about, or you would have thought about the emerging technologies in terms of the new scripting and sort of parametric forms and all of those, and the hand which is trying to sketch all of those, where does they come together, or how do you think about them?
When we say something about the time, so I think the hand will be very important to show us as a human. It's the way to just communicate with the people around us. And the craftsman can draw small. So by having this drawing and assemble one by one, this kind of bricolage, I think it's impossible to have a brick, like a total bricolage, even if the craftsman, they don't understand the process. So I think this one is like an inversion of this kind of parametric thinking. I think it's kind of the bricolage, probably this kind of another way of thinking, like this togetherness, like a respecting people. It's knowing your framework. This is my framework, and like an adaptation within one framework to another framework. And one of the tools, like the devices, is our hand. So I think that's the most important thing. Not decreasing the use, the benefit of the BIM, for example, building integrated modeling. For the high scale project, for the probably more repetitive projects, probably we can have it as a tools. That's why I call it like a new technology. For us as a craftsman, it's a new technology. It helps to like communicate with the formal engineers, because engineers, they just only know BIM, and the craftsman needs to have a hand drawing. But and our position as an architect, in the middle, you need to have both. And by having that, I think the most beautiful about hand drawing is the interpretation of the ideas. People said that the accuracy is important, but my thinking that not the accuracy, the interpretation is more important. By having one jumping to another jumping is open up into more creative leap. I have gotten many beautiful drawings by the craftsmen, and we draw together, Sankalpa. And many our craftsmen, they can make models using a plywood. It's beautiful models. Creating an atrium building, like building an atrium with the models like a plywood. I can say amazing, and I think that's even better than me. when making a model as an architect. So by having that, they have a touch as well, but we just need to have like open up the communication between both. So again, that is hand drawing is very important as a tools. If we want to set the future. So I think if it's possible, Sankalpa, I would like to have all of my practice using hand drawing. If the time is possible. And if the ecosystem is ready, but a lot of ecosystem now is like asking for like a cat drawing. If we produce hand drawing, nobody will accept, and it's put in our contract. So, but it's like just like a romantic thing. It's like happening behind our coded practice. That is very important. Yeah.
Maybe let me put up the last thought which I had about the real rich practice, and let me sort of say in a larger sense, a practice of this kind in the ecosystem of the practitioners of architect and the modes of practice, right from a large practice to medium scale practice, or a practice which is completely based on drawing, and a practice which has got this craftsmanship coming together. His practice certainly opens up for many of the young practitioners and the students some of the ways in which we look at smaller ecosystems rather than a larger sort of a change, because we are continuously seeing in the current world that all these larger chains are not helping helping life of human beings on earth, and we are not aware about a small change at a large scale. What does it do? And in that light, I think these smaller experiment and these smaller networks and these smaller ecosystems of dependence of community progression and progress of the social structure within that community and coming together, I think is one of the remarkable learning which apart from all what I have discussed, we can sort of take it forward and sets up a right tone, at least in the Asian countries where there are still more possibilities of trying to support craftsmen in a number of ways. And in his case, what comes out very clearly is that there is no fear of trying to bring the technology of today and really trying to converge and upgrade what is sort of craftsmanship or what is considered traditional, and make them relevant in contemporary time. So thank you, Real Rich, for such a great effort that you have been doing, and it sets example and courage to all the young practitioners to sort of learn from your practice. And now I hand over to Ayaz.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sankalpa, I think you summarized it very nicely. In and Before I think I conclude, I would like to ask if anyone from amongst the platform would like to ask any question. Anyone from the Zoom or even from the social media, we have some time. We can accommodate a few questions. Meanwhile, Real Rich, I think I have one lot of interesting debates have taken place. I think the questions that Sankalpa has raised, uh, and it was really nice to see the debate, the discussion between two of you. There's just one question that I have is that there are a few. So there are three concepts that you talked about. One was the tectonics grammar, the craftsman part, and then there is the methodological part. Now, in the methodological part, as an architect, so you towards the end of your presentation, you showed a lot of buildings, the traditional buildings from the Indonesia, where you are trying to take certain grammar from the existing traditional architecture of Indonesia. When I look at some of your residences, for example, in the Guild project, for example, where you're trying to create those skylights, and there's also a section that you showed from a traditional building from where you're trying to take those certain elements from those traditional buildings and trying to reinterpret them for a contemporary purpose. So let's say, for example, in the Guild project, for example, it not only becomes the skylight, but it also becomes an element that can generate the convective air current into the building. And so, is this when I look at the word bricolage, when I look at the word genius loci, is it also that you're trying to take certain elements which are there in the traditional architecture and you're trying to find a contemporary uh, meaning or contemporary value in those elements? Is that a conscious effort that you're trying to make as part of the genius loci attempt, let's say?
I think I learned that the vernacularity is very important. Uh, Looking at the daily activity as a daily architecture as a inspirations, especially the traditional house, that we can always have this kind of discussion of this primitive, the originate, things that originate, and it inspires a lot because it's so simple, and it's so simple, it's so functional. And when it's become like a distractions, when we find something very simple and functionable, and we can be detached with this kind of bias and this kind of distortions from the reality. So again, it's true that this vernacularity really inspire us as a practice, as a more essential, not a literal, essential meaning like we don't put everything in front of the face, but it's we try to get what kind of the alchemy, what kind of transformations what kind of the rethink, what kind of the things which is very soft and very understated, which is probably might enrich our daily life as well. So it's like not like putting it like as a like a centered, but it's like we are we as a architect is like at the very the center is the, I don't know, anything that's probably just never been here before. I mean, I just know the tradition is already at the center. We are just like the alchemy. We just try to think every time we design. So I think the vernacularity, I think, is very important, especially to transform the idea into this more primitive, more functional, more easy in the daily life. It's like a very easy. It's like you can do it by yourself. It's like something like that. So it makes the client more understand about architecture, not in our like a strange language, like a unique proportion. No, it's like very straightforward, simple, primitive, easily low maintenance. Like the language is very simple and very striking. And by having like that, the architecture become very easy uh, to to reflect. And then it's when it's easy, our energy is become uh, big, and we are quite happy to see all of this process, and it can easily to be put in the grammar. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so. One I think I would like to conclude here with one simple observation, which I think Sankalp also started his questions with that, and that we talk about uh, all kinds of things. We talk about tectonics grammar, we talk about the craftsmanship, we talk about passive cooling, etc. But that one quote that you included in the beginning, dance like nobody is watching you and sing like no one is listening you, is something that has been there in almost all of your projects. And it was, for example, aim that alpha omega school, or even for that matter in other project, that railing that you created, that curved railing that goes all around the building. I mean, it's a very simple element railing, but it can be celebrated, and it can be made into something that is much more than a railing. And I think that to me was truly represented what dance like nobody is watching, because that railing is literally dancing in the way it has been made. And I think, to me, I think that, and Sankalp has also summarized it very nicely. But this is, to me, is the at the center of all all the projects that I have actually observed. So, dear Rich and Sankalp, to both of you, I'm really really grateful and thankful to both of you on behalf of the team here at Archidiaries. You gave us your valuable time, Real Rich. This was a fantastic presentation, great insights into your practice, and Sankalp, the kind of questions that you raised, I think only you could have done that. So, and I'm also thankful to the people who've joined with us today here and also on the social media, and hope to see you again. And Real Rich, I think we will be looking out. We'll keep an eye on all your projects that you've been doing, and hoping to catch you again sometime back in
Yes.
future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Real Rich. Thank you, Sankalpa.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank,
Ayaz. Thank you,
thank you,
Alpha.
thank you,
Yes.
thank you, thank you.